Hello, everybody. It is giveaway time here at Spark of Genius. I did allude to this on Twitter. We'd be doing a little giveaway. We don't have any like new content creator kits, but myself and my co-creator, co-compatriot, co-commentator, co-caster in the wrong order have been decided to give a little giveaway. So the giveaway will be the first 2 weeks of January, and what you have to do is you have to be a subscriber, like a video for the first 2 weeks of January, and comment either something that you're looking forward to in Flesh and Blood in 2023, and some kind of content that you want to see us create more of in 2023. And you will have a choice of, on my side, you have three. So we do have the Herald of Rebirth left. So we do have a red, yellow, blue Herald of Rebirth. On my side, we also have a triple cold foil cracked bubble for the holidays.
Very festive.
Very, very festive. And then we have a bit of an old school kind of thing. We have 4 non-foil promos from the original set. So
Those are
promo,
old.
They're very
One
old.
of the oldest
so
promos
5,
of the
6,
game.
7. Yeah, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So you get all 4 of those.
Fantastic.
What does Rob have?
On my side, well, I'm going to kind of copy you a little bit. I've got 3 more Herald of Rebirth extended arts. 1 of every pitch goes to 1 person. I've got 3 of the cold foil, I believe, Road to Nationals auras.
Yeah,
for
original
Prism.
ones.
Yeah, 1 of each goes to 1 person. And finally, a cold foil Young Lexi that I got signed personally at Worlds by Federico Musetti. So, yeah, 3 prizes from me, 3 prizes from Eric.
Yep. If you will be called, we will do the spin as we do normally, and all you have to do is email us. Same stuff as before. Let us know, and we'll get those off to you ASAP. Appreciate everyone for their continued support of the channel. Hope everyone's looking forward to 2023 in Fab. Bye for now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. I'm joined by Rob, my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot, and we at Spark of Genius wish you the very best in your Pro Quest season. Let's get into the Pro Tour 3, and we're doing a little bit of a video for everyone going into the first week here. 3 ways to go from beginner to intermediate. We've seen a lot of these videos. These are the top mistakes you make as a beginner, blah, 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 all these. We'll rinse and repeat here. So we decided to take a different approach, and we're going to be trying to level you up with a couple basic tips. Not particularly long video. So here we're going to do 3 ways to go from beginner to intermediate, and then we're going to have another one coming out the following week. 3 ways to go from intermediate to advanced. So starting off here, the first one is determining when to block versus when to take damage. And in particular, the way to kind of, when you're starting out the game, to kind of up your knowledge of the cards is you're going to use what's called your intrinsic value. And so this isn't matchup related. This is specifically based on the stat line of the card. So a couple examples to go with this is if the card is worth more as an attack in your hand than a blocking card. So most of the 0 for 4s in the game, so 0 pitch, doesn't cost anything to use them, but it has 4 power, 4 attack. Most of them have 2 block. And a couple pretty big examples of this are some of the older cards: Scar for a Scar, Snatch, Coax of Commotion. 0 for 4s, some of them have an on hit, some of them don't. And essentially, the amount of health this represents is you can, target your opponent by attacking them for 4 damage to reduce their health by 4, or you could prevent 2 damage in health to you with the two blocking power, right? And so you need to determine which one is worth more. Generally, the 0 for 4 is going to be worth more on the attack, so you probably are not going to want to block with them, right? Another example is keeping the card in your hand instead of blocking, but it doesn't represent any like extra utility or any extra damage. So if you have a bunch of multiple attack actions without a source of go again, you can't really, it's a wasted card in your hand. So let's say you have, like I said, let's say maybe you have a Scar for a Scar, a Snatch, and a Coax. So like maybe you're playing Briar. It's a pretty common hand that you can pop up with as Briar. And then maybe you have like another blue card. Well, maximum if you're at lower health, you can Scar for a Scar and then Snatch or something like that. You don't have 2 non-attacks to get your embodiment, so you really only have 1 source of go again. Maybe you don't want to keep all of those cards. You're not going to need any pitch for those attacks, so maybe you block with the blue 3 block, because you're not going to need that card. And what you can do, 0 for 4 go again, 0 for 4, and then arsenal your last 0 for 4. So that kind of tells you essentially what you need to maximize the intrinsic value of your hand. The last example is when you're playing a more control deck like Bravo, maybe Oldhim, where you generally will be blocking more, and you have to understand kind of things like your weapon swing. So I know if those cost 3, and you're going to pitch a blue to attack for 4, you could pitch another blue when you're generating like a tectonic plating seismic surge token, and it will turn into a 6 power because of the additional line in Anothos that says essentially it goes up +2 if you have 2 or more 3-costed cards in your pitch zone. And so you have to determine whether pitching that extra card to get the tectonic and the 2+ damage is better than blocking for 3, right? And so blocking for cards like an on hit, so when you're gaining essentially 3 life by blocking, instead of, providing 2 extra damage in that utility of the seismic surge, that's something you're going to want to consider. And most of the time, it is better to block with that card, as the intrinsic value of 3 defense is higher than the +2 damage of a Nothos without any extra kind of on hits usually.
Point number 2. When should you use your armor to block, and when should you use your armor for its effects? So every hero starts with armor. It's part of the game. Every hero has a burst of armor they can use, early on or late game if they wish, or effects that can increase their power level from turn to turn. Some effects are continuous, like the tunic. Some are more bursty, like Snapdragon Scalers. But all armor can be used pretty much at the player's discretion, whenever they want. So when should you use the armor? It's very alluring to kind of early on use armor to prevent any kind of damage. Look at your life total. Look at you're higher than your opponent, feels good. But it's often not the case where that puts you in an advantageous situation. So when should you use armor to block? Most of the time, you're going to want to look to armor as your way to block relevant on-hit effects, because not only is that damage prevented, but it's an additional effect that your opponent would gain from the attack landing. So usually you want to save the armor for such effects like Command and Conquer, right? Things that can destroy the arsenal. And there are some examples here that I can give on certain armors that you want to make sure you save for certain key times or key events, and some that you want to use kind of early on. So Crown of Providence is a new headpiece that came out with Uprising, and it says that when you block with the card, you can put a card from Arsenal, back under your deck and draw a card, or from your hand if you wish. The most common time to use this is to block Command and Conquer, which targets the Arsenal, and if you're a deck that really likes to utilize 5-card hands, the damage from CNC isn't that bad. You can take it as long as you save your Arsenal. The second card is the Fyandel Spring Tunic. This is a card that generates value over time, but only when there isn't 3 charges on it already. So if you are a combo deck, it's usually a good idea to keep the Tunic charged for when you want to play your flagship card. Like if you're in Brute, you want to play Blood Rush Bellow, it's a very good card to pay off with Tunic. But if you're a deck that just kind of uses the value over time, you probably want to use the Tunic as early as possible, because then you're kind of giving up value if you're kind of keeping the charges on there. So that's another card that kind of has some play involved when to use it. Lastly, Snapdragon Scalers, a very good card in aggro decks. It allows you to gain Go Again on an attack action card, and for many aggro decks, this is pretty much a key card to close out games. If you use the card early for an extra 3-4 damage, it's usually underutilized. You want to use it when you have a good on-hit effect, maybe like a Snatch, for 4 to draw a card, especially with Go Again. That's a very powerful card. E-Strike, a very good card to, play, draw a card, then gain Go Again off your Snapdragon Scalers. But if you're using it on something that just is like a 0 for 4 with no additional on-hit, usually very, very underutilized. Going for lethal is also fine too. If you're in a ranger deck like Lexi or Azalea, very good for pushing lethal near the end of the game, because your opponent has to block it.
And the last one we're going to talk about here is getting comfortable with one hero first. So you're being a bit of a one-trick, essentially, would be the term in the game, just for the first little bit. So the reason why we say this is a way to go from beginner to intermediate is it gets you to learn the different card options available, put in a bunch of reps on one specific hero, so you're able to kind of greater utilize your skill set and determine the strategies or the strategy the hero employs to win the game. So in this particular case, let's say you really want to play Rhinar, right? Let's say you picked up the Classic Battles kit. Rhinar and Dorinthia are the heroes. Let's say you really enjoy Rhinar. So putting in a bunch of reps and learning all about Rhinar. So the key card in Rhinar is Blood Rush Bellows. So it really pays to learn when to use Blood Rush Bellow. Using it after blocking an opponent's attack the previous turn leaves you with fewer cards to really get your big combos off Blood Rush, right? So what you really want to do is keep a 5-card hand. Tunic would be very, very good if your Tunic was on 3. Using your Tunic, playing out the Blood Rush from Arsenal, let's say you have all 6 powers and you're able to like get both of your claws off, possibly 1 to 2 attacks. Maybe you roll a good scab skin leather roll a nice 4, get a couple get attack actions down, and you're doing a lot of damage because you're getting your intimidates off. And so everything I'm kind of saying definitely comes with more practice to be able to utilize the main win conditions of the deck. And another example on kind of the flip side, a more aggressive deck, as far as more linear aggro approach is Lexi, right? So you really need to make sure to maximize your damage, or you risk being fatigued because the bow doesn't actually do damage on its own. So Lexi, Azalea, Dromai run weapons that cannot just kind of come and attack for damage, right? So you could pick one of these decks and really play more and more to make sure you understand the ins and out on when to go super aggressive and when to turtle up for a bigger attack. So knowing when to use cards like Art of War, Three of a Kind, Rain Razors can make the difference between essentially overpowering a defensive hero and being fatigued. Because if you're not able to fully utilize those cards, once you don't have them and your opponent knows you don't have them, it's a lot easier for them to turtle up and defend. Utilizing the second arsenal slot for Lexi is extremely important. Being able to always utilize New Horizon, have a card flipped up into arsenal card, come in with a 6-card hand. Very, very useful. And it's usually correct to take a more passive turn and prepare for a big 6-card turn afterwards against a deck that's actively trying to block you out, because they don't need to do anything before you run out of threats, and then they can just hit you with their weapon. So these are a couple examples for these heroes. Of course, every hero has their ins and outs, and playing a lot more reps on one particular hero will enable you to come up with your own strategies with the hero, maybe different kind of deck construction techniques for this kind of hero, and you're able to really take the template and make it your own. And that's when you start getting into your comfort pick, like Denny on Lexi, for example, 9-0 Singapore Battle Hardened, same kind of idea. And it will really help understanding of the game. And then when you have a better grasp on kind of these 3 topics that we kind of talked about, you'll be in a much better position to kind of explore different heroes in different parts of the game. So I hope everybody enjoyed that kind of little rundown for your ProQuest. If you are a new player, please don't feel intimidated by going to your local ProQuest. While it is going to be more competitive than Armory, many, many players are going to come simply with their pet decks to have fun. It is the entry to the competitive scene. So feel free, go have fun, play your decks, play some Flesh and Blood in the Flesh and Blood as James White intended. And with that, we'll be back later on with the 3 ways that we think will help you go from intermediate to advanced. Bye for now.